Hasso, presented by Sprint. Be there now with 055.
Manatungod, pausa tiaman magpusi siya programa, proprio punilay. Inti mas Tiu Hasso sti bidadata masana mahalang jo dede. Anay pausa tutuhun sti ezama lago by song an alpha bidata taiguini. Don Tiu Hasso, za maso bisita jo siya lugar na man stabet. Masa zama atensyon ho, dan apasa corazon ho. Wala mo no zagwa sansata perfetta mabisita mo siya no ora, ban un dia ni panintesta siya, katsongta siya, natungota siya. Data vanita mo siya un rotwa, domali na balya mala magay laidi masapat man masapeta na. Law tisina na utungo lo que tinha. Este bem chegando a mim no seguiu de que se cheio vira de toda te marcho compreender. Mas lá donc coração não vai conseguir vira do. Mas se afan ma pologi me nota. Dama challenge it like finit English. Sini lai to chowe, mas se chowe. E market, mas é chocho leblu, mas já foi chocho. Este ponto qua, e mais bonito ni bidata, da satba para todo o tempo, e cultura e costume e manainata. Este que para ma bende, este que para ma fahan, este para ma entrega. De me sweatit, saman me entrega. No, Nihi Ta Hasso. No, Nihi Ta Hasso. During early episodes of this program, I mentioned the role that songs played in our daily lives during the war, compelled both by love for the songs and the circumstances. We sang our own songs in Chamorro, and we even added a Japanese song with Chamorro words, as a matter of fact. With the Americans came new songs by internationally known artists, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Bing Crosby, and the Mills Brothers. Two songs seemed to be particularly popular and prophetic, one of which was I'll Walk Alone, which you're now hearing. Frustrated by years and years of lethargy on the part of the federal government, we decided to take initiatives on what we wanted to do, and indeed, in a manner of speaking, we had to walk alone in our quest for self-determination, as an example. The voice that you're now hearing is very familiar to you, I'm sure, and so is the song. Don't fence me in. The opening words, oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Given the situation we're faced with right now, this moment, this piece could very well serve as our song for the lingering land issues we continue to face. The Spanish troops, when they were here, left us the chorizo. The Japanese Navy introduced us to the biscucho, and the U.S. warriors brought the spam. We like them so much that they're now part of our table. We sang the songs, but we did not keep them. But in retrospect, perhaps we should have, because they seem more appropriate today than they were 50 years ago. But we continue to walk alone, and we continue to say, please, don't fence me in. In one of the segments in Chamorro, I lamented the fact that many of our loved ones are not with us to observe this happy week. We emerged from the war tattered, but not torn, standing, though in some instances with crutches, and smiling, if only to hide a cry. As a people, we had passed the test. Our customs, our culture, and our dignity remain intact. Now the next test for us was to see whether we could govern ourselves. 4 of our sons who were in the struggle with our people serve as Magatlahi in the past few years and paved the way for continuing progress towards self-determination. They're not with us, but I think it would be well for us to remember them as we observe the 50th anniversary. Joseph Flores, banker and publisher. He was a prominent community leader and designated by the Pope Knight Commander of the Order of San Silvestre. Manuel Flores Leon Guerrero, who, while acting governor during the absence of Governor Daniels, showed his leadership and managerial skills during Super Typhoon Karen and earned himself an appointment to governor by President Kennedy. Carlos Garcia Camacho, professional, dentist, former senator, community leader, enjoyed the honor of being Guam's first elected governor after he had enjoyed being appointed governor earlier. And Ricardo Jerome Berdallo, businessman, former senator, and one of Guam's most enduring political personalities. He had the privilege of being the first governor to hold the office twice. In the field of education, Drs. Tony Yamashita and P. Sanchez were quietly going about the job of upgrading our educational institutions and facilities, and they did them with great dedication, pride, and without fanfare. Sons and daughters of Guam, driven by an intense desire to do well with newfound opportunities after surviving the desperate days of the war, went on to successful careers in music, medicine, law, the military, among others. Meanwhile, other sons and daughters excelled in business and commerce, which is where the engines are that sustain our economy. Among the notables in this group was Eduardo Calvo, very prominent in the early days of the political struggle as a senator, but he became even more so as an enterprising businessman. Through industry and creative investment and management, he developed what we now know as Calvo Enterprises. Like the others, he was with us during the struggle, and as you can see from this picture taken 50 years ago, he suffered along with us. And by the way, the smiling young boy, whose favorite song is The Impossible Dream, along with his brothers Eddie and Jerry, now run Calvo Enterprises. Oh yes, the boy's name, Paul MacDonald Calvo, who in time became governor of Guam himself. In a couple of days, you will be thrilled and touched at seeing the 4 grand marshals of the parade. All sons of Guam, all war veterans of World War II, from all of the services of the United States, the Army, the Navy, the Army Air Corps, and the Marines. Like dozens of other Chamorros who were off island at the time, their instinctive reaction to the war was to sign up and serve the country. One was already in the Navy as an enlisted man stationed in Hawaii. The other 3 were college students in Illinois, California, and Hawaii. But what was particularly noteworthy about these men was that they had joined the service. If they had joined the service on Guam, they would have been compelled to join as Navy stewards. But by joining away from Guam, they were able to compete as officer candidates, which is what they did, and that is what they became, officers in the Army, the Air Corps, and the Marines. In time, the man who was already an enlisted man rose to become a chief petty officer himself. The family names are very well known to us: Taitano, Martinez, Siguenza, and Cristobal. Grand Marshal Carlos Taitano, attorney, former speaker, and the moving force behind many of the early efforts which eventually brought us a measure of political recognition. When President Truman signed the Organic Act of Guam in 1950, Carlos represented Guam in the ceremony. Grand Marshal Glenn Martinez, a member of a very prominent Martinez family in Guam, added to the family's reputation with his own performance as a pilot in the Army Air Corps during the war. Grand Marshal Pete Siguenza fought at Bougainville and wanted to be in the liberating forces with the Marines, but he was attending Officers Candidate School, where he was eventually commissioned as an officer in the Marines. Pete served in both federal and territorial governments with distinction and is one of the pillars in our community today. Grand Marshal George Cristobal, one of the highly respected citizens and community leaders, was in the Navy. He was a chief petty officer and returned to Guam to continue his service to our people. In my view, it is especially fitting that these 4 men, representing the dozens of fellow Chamorros who served, fought, were wounded or killed while serving with the United States Armed Forces, while their own families were in occupied Guam, serve as Grand Marshals this year. We have always felt as a people that given equal chance, we give equal or better performance in return. Our Grand Marshals this year attest to that And they did it 50 years ago. Todo tiempo, Nihi Ta Hasso. A few days ago, United States Senator Howell Heflin of Alabama called to express his deep regrets that his duties in the Senate prevent him from returning to Guam, and wanted me to express his sentiments to our people. It was a moving and a magnanimous gesture from a man who, although he has reached great heights as Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court and as a U.S. Senator, still considers his participation in the liberation of Guam one of the great moments in his life. For warriors, returning to the field of battle is unequaled in meaning and significance, and especially when this return is in the autumn of one's life. As guests of our people for our golden anniversary are hundreds of veterans of the Army, Navy, Air Corps, Coast Guard, and Marines, many of whom have waited years for this anniversary. Like the then Lieutenant Heflin, many of the warriors went on to become very successful. 3 Marines, as a matter of fact, who commanded troops on Guam, Shepard, Cushman, and Wilson, eventually became commandants of the Marine Corps themselves, and all of whom have served previously as Grand Marshals in our parades over the years. Because of the very long and close association between the people of Guam and the Marines, there has always been a very special sentiment for them on Guam. We have heard stories and seen pictures of tiny U.S. flags made by the Chamorros during the occupation. But when you look closely at these pictures that I'm showing you, you will find something else. For instance, this group of people coming out of the concentration camp is headed by a gentleman who is jauntily showing off his Marine campaign hat, which he wore throughout the war. In this picture of a lady on a stretcher, in obvious agony and pain, you will notice she has her belongings on one side, and on her right arm she's clutching on to what's probably her husband's hat, a Marine campaign hat. During the 25th anniversary 1969, the guest of honor was General Shepard, who commanded a Marine brigade during the liberation on Guam. He ended his speech before the Guam legislature by saying, "When I get to heaven, I know that the Marines who died on Guam will greet me with this question: General, was Guam worth it?" He told us that when that question is asked, his answer is going to be, "You damn right it was." There's another saying that I like to cite now, and that is, it goes like this: for those who are willing to wear the uniform and die and fight and die for freedom, life has a special flavor the protected will never know, except on Guam. For we on Guam know that special flavor of life, and we do appreciate the sacrifices of the servicemen who came to liberate us. I know that I'm speaking in behalf of our people when I say, thank you, Army. Thank you, Navy. Thank you, Air Corps. Thank you, Coast Guard. And no, I did not forget. Thank you, United States Marines. Before this parade starts today highlighting our golden salute, a son of Guam born during the occupation will step before the reviewing stand and receive the Distinguished Service Cross, our country's second highest award for heroism on the battlefield. He's receiving this in lieu of the Congressional Medal of Honor, for which he had been recommended. He will then render a salute, and Sergeant Major Juan O. Blas, retired, will march off and the parade begins. John Blas epitomized the finest in soldiering, and when the torch was passed, he carried it high, he carried it well. Whatever remaining misgivings others have about us, even those of